Hi everybody. I like to show you something different. So we're going to move on. I had a lot of bleed through from the last signature. Those signatures are those little groupings that I'm showing you that are several pages stitched together. So where those fold lines are and it divides the signatures, there's a larger gap. So it's an easier place for fluid to bleed through. So that's just the way it is with this little book, and I don't mind. I'll deal with that. But it inspired me with those colors. I'm going to create three spreads here for you that imitate marble. And then we're going to do things with it, take it to another level. But I wanted to start with these colors because I do believe some marbles would contain these colors, number one. And it helps to sort of work with that bleeding in the middle of my page. So I'm using my left hand to make some intuitive marks with a fine liner pencil. Because if you look closely at marble, you will see some very fine hairline marks like that. So it helps to have different thicknesses of lead. These Stabilo Woodies are wonderful because they're full of pigment. So I've got three of them. I've got a flesh color, a pink, and then the black. And they are water soluble, so you will see that they're quite useful for spreading color around and making sort of subtle lines as well. So I'm trying to imitate natural stone, which would be marble in this case. When I wet it and use my soft bristle brush, I can spread that color from the pencils around. Again, they're called Stabilo Woodies. They're like a watercolor pencil, really, really full of pigment. I really like them. So I'm just coaxing that around. It's quite subtle, so I will add more. I'm dabbing that inside seam to always make sure that no extra water floods into there. So let's bring out a little more. There's my Stabilo Woodie. What I like about them is you can do it lightly, smudge it with your finger, and I don't mind that smudging is also picking up some dirty marks from the lead. I welcome those smudges because if you look at marble, you'll see that there are lots of shades of gray and black in them and smudgy areas. So this to me mimics it fairly well. I'm no geologist, but I think it's along the line of marble. You get the idea. So I've got the very fine lines from the pencil, and I've got some smudgy colors and lines from my Stabilo Woodies. Now I'm going to add my high flow acrylic black paint that's in a dispenser with a fine tip, and I could use that and write with it and draw with it quite easily. I have a lot of fun making fluid lines with that. And then what I'm doing is spraying water to activate that pigment and encouraging it, but it's not enough pigment there, so I wanted to encourage it with a little more, but we'll get there. I'm dabbing that center again, keeping it as dry as I can. So while it's still wet, I can activate, I could get more black by pressing the Stabilo Woodie down on there. I guess I'm not pressing firmly enough because it didn't really bleed a lot of pigment, but that's okay. I'm liking what's happening here, so I keep dabbing and wiping, putting more, and we'll see how it results. If you know my work, you know that I do things in layers, and the fun about doing these layers is one builds upon the other and things reveal, which is really hard to paint afterwards. It's pretty much the best way to achieve these things is by doing layers. It looks wasteful that it looks like I'm putting pigment down and then wiping, but I'm not, because every time I dab away or wipe, a little bit stays and adds character to the page. I love putting textures down. I love playing with textures and levels of depth on a page. So this is coming along nicely, and I'm going to leave it to dry naturally. Before I did let it dry, though, I added some more pink and smudged it with my finger. Smudging will work to get rid of some of that crayon line. If I would have pressed too hard with the crayons, it would leave crayon marks, and I didn't want that. So I'm pressing really softly and then smudging to keep it down. But again, you could wet the tip of the Stabilo Woodie with a paintbrush and use it as paint, and it would probably be even more effective. But I'm showing you what you can do by coloring directly on a wet page. This is a lot of fun. I haven't done this yet on my tiny books, so I'm happy to show you new things. I decided with that green on the page and with all that strong color down the middle of my spread, I thought I would get a white soft pastel pencil crayon out and dab it, so it gives a very chalky surface. If I would have used my high flow acrylic white paint, I wouldn't have liked that because it's quite dense and and shiny, and it would have shown where I did that. This way I can smudge it around and make it look more part of the paper. I like that. That worked. And in doing that, I'm just adding dry pastel. I'm not adding sticky pigment through the center seam, which would make the book sticky when I open and close it. So that worked out really well. So I've got a container on the side here. I've got a little bit of my high flow black, adding a little water to it so that I can match the gray. What I'm trying to do, there's some shadows of gray on the page, especially on the top left there, and I want to accent that more. So I gave it a little test on a side piece of cardstock, and that's the color that I indeed wanted. And I'm just filling in some areas to accent that background and bring the white forward. I think that's a lot of fun. I think it's really effective, and it really does remind me of stone. And I'm just finding a few little places. I'm not going to overwork this piece. I'm just trying to accent that background in a few areas. Again, the idea is to make it look like stone and to give it depth and layers. So I'm really happy with this. Again, I don't want to overdo it. Now I found that as it was drying, it went really pale. I could have done that a little darker, but rather than start with too dark, I thought I may as well do 2 layers of lighter. As it's drying, I just added more, so it gave a little more impact. It's a very smoky look. I'm happy with it. This is the mindful part of my process that I really enjoy, because the piece is pretty much done. I was just enhancing a bit. So there you have it. There's a new effect. I like it. We might change it, add more color later, but for now, I'm really loving how this looks. So right now, my goal is to show you 3 spreads with marble, and then we can see where we can take that later. I'm liking that. So I normally would put matte medium to protect all that black smudging, but I'm not doing that. I want to leave it free. So let's do a second spread. Again, a very, very fine pencil. I think this is one of the most effective tools that I've used to make this marble look, because it really does imitate those fine, very, very fine lines in marble. I think the success here is doing that, doing the pencil crayons, smudges of color, and then using my high flow black ink and spreading that around with water. The 3 things combined give us this effect of marble. I have to press quite hard because I've got too many crayon lines there that I really didn't want to look like crayon. I wanted that to smudge a bit better, but that's okay. Using water to activate it and then smudge helps, but you can still see a hint of the line that I scribbled with the crayon. That's okay. You get the idea. This is showing you hopefully you can do this and mimic it even better. I'm just giving you tricks. And I'm enjoying where I'm dabbing there with my dirty finger with the lead. I'm dabbing that in places to keep it settling on that spot so that it will dry with those little smudges. I think that gives it a real natural stone look. And I couldn't have achieved that with brush strokes. On these marble pages, I do not want brush strokes. You would never see brush strokes on a slab of marble. It would always be smudges and shades of colors melding into each other. This is so much fun. I'm loving this technique. I'm going to do this more often. But I was trying to think with the set of 3 books here, what have I not shown you yet? And so this is a good way to work on the last half of this third tiny book, is to show you even more techniques that I hadn't thought of before. I love coloring with that Stabilo Woody while a page is still wet. It really helps to soak in and absorb, and it intensifies the depth of that black. And again, I'm using my finger I'm actually picking up bits of that strong black, getting it on my fingertip, and then dabbing it in new places. This is so fun. It's got a very three-dimensional look to it already. Love it a lot. I'm just dabbing that page behind. It was a smudge. You got to watch, because these little books, the pages aren't the best quality watercolor paper, so when you wet them hot with a lot of water like that and then add pigment, it wants to curl the page, and wherever the page curls, either to the outer edge or the inner seam, that's where the water and the paint wants to pool. And so you have to be mindful of dabbing that, otherwise it spreads to the pages underneath. So I'm using the pink woody pencil, and I'm pressing with very wet areas, so it's releasing a lot of that pink. I didn't have to press really hard because there was so much water there already. It's just like almost like dabbing a paintbrush on that spot. I'm enjoying adding more pink to this page. Lots of fun. You can see why these are a great travel companion when you want to go somewhere. Like I go to the desert a lot, and I like to do art journal books, and bringing these Stabilo Woodies is so convenient. I'm enjoying how the black is spreading as well into gray areas on that bottom right hand of the left page on the spread there. It's really fun right there to watch how the water spreads some of that pigment. So I'm just dabbing in little spots. I don't want to draw lines. I'm just dabbing, in other words, just to get some paint down on the page, and then using my finger to smudge it around. So enjoyable. I'm just so lost in my zone working on this, because I'm not trying to contrive any shapes or anything. Those were already scribbled on. All I'm doing now is adding water and releasing where the pigment wants to go. So it's quite fun just to observe it and coax it around a little bit. I'm going to use more water, so I'm going to actually paint a coating. I didn't do it on the page before, but I am going to do a coating of matte medium over this page. Now, it looks like I'm pressing firmly. You could see it smudged a little there. Wherever my paintbrush touches that black, because it wasn't sprayed with a fixative, that can be released. So where I dabbed a lot there, I put a lot of matte medium and very lightly dabbed over it to spread it, to coat it. So now that pigment is trapped between the paper and the matte medium, it's going to fix itself. But every time I move this paintbrush around over more areas of black, it will pick up some of that black. So I'm constantly wiping the brush and starting clean again, and again pressing very lightly over those very black spots. So this in itself is giving a bit of a coating on the page, and it's protecting the black paint underneath. And before it even dries completely, I'm adding some high flow acrylic white, which is semi-transparent white, and I'm smudging that around the page. I'm not pressing hard because I don't want brush strokes. I'm basically using, the trick here is to use a very soft brush and make sure you don't press too hard. And I'm just trying to bring forward more white and recede some of that busy background so that it's got these layers. It's almost like glazing white. I'm happy with how that's turning out. And because I don't want brush strokes, I'm just dabbing that a bit, and then I'm going to finish off by using my fingertip just to sort of smudge it around, just to eliminate any brush strokes. put a few areas of white on the left to balance. And again, I'm kind of just smudging it down and distributing that paint without being too deliberate. And then on the bottom where it was quite dry, I'm smudging it, and it's almost, and I'm not, the brush is not wet. And so what I'm getting is almost a dry on dry effect, which gives it kind of that chalky, scratchy look. I like that. Now I'm adding more texture and fun to the page. I'm not overthinking this. Whatever the nanosecond dictates for me to do, I kind of go with the flow. So I felt like putting a little more white down. There's a lot of texture there on the page now. But there's still some white paint that's still a little bit wet. So I'm going to put a little more down. And then what I'm going to do is spray some water over the whole spread. And what that does is it releases whatever leftover paint is still there. It kind of loosens it up, and it sits over top of the spread like a film. But before I get there, I'm just adding a little more right there. I wanted to accent that notchy little section. That white is fairly semi-transparent, so that's why I keep doing layer upon layer until I see how much it's covered from what was below. So now when I spray the water, it becomes slightly milky and more marble-like. But the only other thing that's happening is as I press that down is now I'm lifting off from the texture of the paper towel. You can see those little checked grid marks. What's happened is it's lifted off some paint and left some paint there from the texture of the paper towel, but I really like that. So this is where I mentioned we're starting off with a technique of creating a marble look, and then we're taking it a step further. What can we do to it to get more interest and texture on the page? That was a lot of fun. Let's see what we can do with the third page. Getting out my Stabilo-Woodies again, coloring. I'm coloring along the cracked lines of the marble this time. And now I've got my high flow black. I'm actually, it doesn't look like it, but I've pressed quite firmly, so there's a lot of black pigment there. So now when I spread water, wow. But that's okay. You might say that's nothing like marble, or that's a really dark one, but I'm purposely pressing down firmly with paper towel to release a lot of that. And I'm crazy in love with that effect. That's fun. I'm adding some more smudges. This is going to be a very dark piece of marble. And activating with water, spreading that around while I can. But I've decided I don't like that center smudge. And it wouldn't dab away because the page wasn't protected, so it was getting absorbed right into the paper. So what I'm going to do is spray a little harder, try and dab that away, but I won't be very successful because, again, that paper wasn't protected, so it got absorbed right away into the page. Now that's okay. We'll see where we go from here. I'm giving the page a good dry because it was really, really wet. And now that it's bone dry, I thought I'd get my wax crayons out there. Those are wax crayons. I'm holding the white on its side, and I'm just rubbing, kind of doing a rubbing all over a lot of the page. So I'm giving it a chalky effect, and I'm also protecting anything that's below that. Wherever I'm coloring with white, now I'm putting a white fixative, not fixative, resist on top. It's wax. So everywhere where you see me coloring the white, it's going to stay white. But what I'm doing is trying to add texture. I'm trying to make it really interesting, give it more, taking it to a new level. I'm experimenting. It was marble looking. Anyway, if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe and like it because it encourages me. And if you subscribe, you'll be able to get all my new posts whenever I've got them up and running. And I love hearing from you with your comments, so please, I read them. I like hearing where you're from. I like hearing what you liked about my lessons or anything. Just say hello. I appreciate it. So I've got some blue mixed with water. I'm going to test it on a piece of cardstock. I thought I'd put blue on this page. I don't believe there is blue marble, but my marble is going to be blue because I'm the artist. I have the right to make it what I want. At first it was a little light, so I added more blue. And as you could see, obviously some of that black smudged. I didn't get it covered a lot, and because I didn't protect the page, there is risk of some of this black that didn't get covered by wax or matte medium that it could bleed, but that's okay. On this page, I am experimenting. I've just gone well beyond marble. Now I'm just going into my typical abstract zone of let's play and see what happens. And that's what I highly encourage you to do. Be free, feel loose and free, and be open to anything, because it's sometimes happy accidents that make the best pieces of all. So I'm coaxing it around with a soft brush. Again, it's pooling down on the edges. I've got to get that wiped. It's kind of fun to see it in blue. Get that center dabbed. And the edges. I wish I could find a tiny book. I'll probably have to make one. I'll make one maybe for another lesson, and I'll make sure that it's really good watercolor paper in there so that we can have fun without our pages curling. I had in my stash this tissue print, which was a very soft, delicate remnant of a print. I think it was a second or third pull. And I like how distressed it is. And I've pulled it out numerous times in the last couple of weeks and never used it. But today's the day, people. I'm using it. Again, we're taking this beyond marble now, because obviously marble wouldn't have that. But now I am just having fun, letting loose with what I've shown you. And my mind, my instinct was just to go further and have some fun here. So the sky's the limit. I'm teaching you so many tricks. It's whatever you feel you want to do. I'm just using the wet paintbrush, of course, to water all along the perimeter of the shapes that I want to the printed shapes that I want to glue down. So I'm getting a good coat of matte medium on the page. I'm trying to not press too hard where it was black there in case it smudged. Now I'll put my print over top and watch this paint transform. This is the magic. I've just taken it to a new level. And if I didn't like what that did, I could pull it back while it's still wet, but I like what's happening here. I don't like how thick the tissue was on the bottom left there, so I might have to deal with that right there. I don't mind that it didn't cover the whole page and that there's more black on the bottom. I think that's a fun surprise. I like that. I do not like to plan things too much. I like them to organically just become what they are. I'm really enjoying this distressed print. It's just transformed this page. And by keeping a lot of the tissue over most of the page, allows it to soften the background and make it a little bit more muted, more cloudy. I'm just wiping off any excess matte medium through the center of that book so that it doesn't get sticky when I want to close and shut the book. While it's still wet, I decided I want to scrape some of that tissue paper away and reveal more black. I quite like that black smudgy shape down there, and I wanted to reveal it. Like I said, sometimes the pages tell me what wants to be revealed. I wait for it to happen and then I respond. I'm liking that. There's darker depths of black, there's muted depths of black, there's chalky bits. That's quite fun. All those areas where I did the white showed. This one's got lots of texture, and then that one's more true to the original marble effect. But what I decided to do, since we have pink and blue on the other pages, is I thought I would use airbrush medium, which I use often in my abstracts. It's a good liquid to help spread around paint. And I've got in a dispenser previously mixed quinacridone nickel gold with a bit of white, with a bit of this airbrush medium to make it flow. And I'm using the airbrush medium as a glaze. Again, it helps move the paint around in a glazed way. I love glazing. I love the subtlety, transparency of a glaze. It adds water in a very subtle, transparent way. And if you ever want darker areas, you just go over and make slightly darker color. I really enjoy glazing. I've decided I want to bring out a little more orange along that white edge there so that it is just a little more fun. And it just follows where the edge of that black is. It almost looks like the black is a canyon. And to balance the spread, I'm putting a little more in the right, but in a different direction. So I'm liking that a lot. But I want to, it's a little dirty looking, so I want to add some, instead of the high flow acrylic white, which was semi-transparent, I'm using right out of the tub a more solid pasty white. And I'm going to feather that. I'm not pressing hard, even though it looks like it. I sped this up so it's fast, but I wasn't pressing hard. I was kind of just smushing it around the top surface of the page because I wanted to brighten this page up a bit, and I think that really helped. There's a lot of dry on dry down there. Right now it is all dry on dry, but again, I'm going to spray water and release some of that wet paint, and it becomes quite milky and filmy. And I like that filminess because that kind of goes more with the flavor of, you know, the effect of marble. And then I'm just dabbing lightly with a Kleenex, and I'm going to let that dry. I'm not going to blow dry it. I want that milky water to sit where it was. So this was dry, bone dry. I think I left it a day. It dried a little bit lighter, more transparent. Here's my blue. So in there is a hint of more pink. So let's go with it. Let's add more pink because there's a lot of black and white texture on that page. So I want to just bring out some more color. And I'm using my airbrush medium again to move that paint around. Oh, quick, let's dab that middle. Yeah, so I'm going to use that as, like I say, it's a good carrier. But the thing is, it's very sticky. It's not watery. You could do the same effect right now with water, but I didn't want to oversaturate that page with more water and ruin the binding. So I did use the airbrush medium, but it takes a lot longer to dry and it dries a little bit tacky. So you just have to keep that page open and let it dry really, really well. And then when everything is said and done, once it's bone dry, put a good coating of baby powder over there so that the page doesn't stick together with the other page when the book is closed. But I love airbrush medium because you get this, you definitely get that glazed effect. That's a lot of fun. But it will take probably a couple hours to dry. Just warning you. And using my finger to dab a little to keep some stronger pink in that spot, but being quite smudgy. Again, I don't want brush strokes. So I started with the blow dryer. It took a long time, plus a day to wait, and that's how it dried. So for this spread, I've got a real mess down the center of the page. So the first thing I want to do is cover that up with some heavy paste white paint. And that will do if I'm doing a dry on dry technique here. So that I'm going to do two things. I'm going to cover it up and I'm going to add white randomly across the spread. I'm not going to do white completely everywhere. I'm kind of smudging it around, and I don't mind if it doesn't cover every single bit of the background paper because I want to see the difference later between when I add fluid paint. I want to see the difference between where it soaks into the paper and where it hits this white paint that I'm putting down now. So that's just showing you some options of what it looks like when you don't completely cover the page. But for starters, it's a good way of covering that mess in the white in the center of the seam. I want to stick with these three colors. This quinacridone Nicolazo gold is not quite as, it's a little darker than the other two. These two here, the one on my right was made from that color, but I added a little bit of white and a little bit of airbrush medium. And in this case, it was the quinacridone red, I believe it was, that I added with white and also some airbrush medium. So it's slightly different. Both these two from this tube are a little bit, I'm going to say a little syrupy would be the best way to describe it. It's a little bit tacky from the airbrush medium, which makes your paint just very much like a syrup. So it makes it tacky, it makes it harder to dry, but I thought it'd be a fun way to use it because I want to lift some texture, I want to lift some paint off and reveal texture from this paper towel. So I'm pressing really firmly. So what I want to do with this spread is play with those three colors and play with textures, layer upon layer upon layer of glazing textures. So I'm not worried about a clean towel. I don't mind if some of that pink from before smudges down. The whole idea is just to press down randomly and see if I can pick up some texture from the towel. And it did. You can see the texture there. I'm going to add a little bit more pink because a little bit too much got lifted. But again, so I'm doing layers and layers. Some of them will overlap, but the whole effect will be those three colors. There's a much better example now of the texture. And I want to let that be good and dry, which I did. I've sped this up now. Now I'm using my quinacridone Nicolazo gold that was blended with white and that airbrush medium. So it's, again, going on a little sticky. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to lift off. I know it looks dark, but if you don't start with dark and then lift, you don't have any color left in the background to be revealed. So this is just my technique. Taking a little peek there to see how it's getting done. That's great. It's adding some texture in different areas now. And again, I'm overlapping. So I've got layers that overlap. It will reveal some of the pink below. I'm going to spray a bit of water to release some of that because I didn't want all that pink covered up. And I'm just dabbing, and this time I'm going to bunch up the tissue. I don't want it to go the same. I want it to bunch up and have a different pattern, and that worked. So I'm going to let that get good and dry too, but before I do, I'll add a little bit more of this gold and dab it away. There we go. Nice texture. But again, we're going to do layers and layers. It's going to look messy until it all comes together. So that has to be dry, which it did. It went away and came back. Now I've got my Indian yellow. I really love the intensity and the brightness and the happiness of this Indian yellow. So I'm putting a good dose on right from the bottle, spreading it around with my favorite paintbrush. Look how vibrant that is. A lot of fun. I can't wear this color, but I sure do love painting with it. And again, I'm bunching up the paper towel to get a different texture of paper towel revealed. That's fun. And hopefully, the more layers I do and then I dab away, the more I can still see remnants of the previous layers. And because it covered a little too much, I'm spraying with water and dabbing a little bit away so that I can pick up a little bit more and reveal more of that pink. I'll let that get good and dry. Now you can see there's 3 layers of colors, 3 layers of patterns from those. Now we're getting a little bit of interest. I'm not sure at this point if I'm going to be doing adding a layer of printed tissue over top, or if I'm going to do something else. But as I put this pink down, I decided, you know what, I'm going with my instinct. I decided I wanted to leave it like it was and let it dry. but it's very thick and syrupy, and I don't want it to spread and move around. That left side of the book's getting quite high, and so I need to weigh it down with something heavy. So that bowl worked, and I let that get good and dry. You can see how shiny it is from the airbrush medium. Makes it get quite a shine to it and a stickiness. So that was really, really dry. I think I had to leave that overnight. And I really enjoyed how when you use airbrush medium and then it dries, it wants to separate. And so what you saw there was little bits of darker pink going to the edges of that swooshy line. And what I'm doing now is I'm using my magenta mixed with water. And all I want to do is create a bit of layer. I'm liking this page just like it is, but this kind of, on the left, it kind of makes me think of a flower. So I thought, let's put a little bit of this very wet wash, if you will, of magenta. It's very, very watery. It's sitting on the surface, and some of it will sink into those grooves where those specks are. I think that's really fun. It's very almost grainy. I like that. So what I'm doing is creating layers and adding just a little oomph of color, just to jazz it up a little bit. I'm really enjoying how that magenta is settling down inside those grooves, which are like little specks. You can see I can smudge it away. The pink is actually very smooth. Not quite plasticky, but very smooth. Anyway, I'm really enjoying how this magenta settles into the textures of that background. And that was my purpose, was to create texture and layers and just a little more interest. So I like how that's looking there. And this area here where the yellow is, I'm going to leave that band of yellow as it is. I just wanted to do a hint. And on the right, the same thing. I just want to bring out a little bit of depth. Not too much. I don't want to overdo this. But I'm just enhancing the pattern on the paper that was from the other layers. This is a very wet wash. I have to keep it wet and as a wash so that it will fill in those grooves in the background, but not cover up the texture from the background. So it's revealing the paper towel imprint, if you will, and adding a bit of pink at the same time. And you can see when I do this, it adds depth. I like that texture. I like that texture there. And it makes that pink pop forward. So I think this is just fun. I'm not going to do any more than that. I just want the left and right to have a little bit of pop. Because it was so transparent, it was drying, I just wanted to enhance a little bit more, that's all. But I'm sticking with these areas and leaving the rest as is. I think that's a lot of fun. And I'm just dabbing. I'm not trying to spread around. I'm using the soft bristles to dab. That's fun. I like it. Haven't done anything like this before, so that's fun. I am really sorry. I thought I had the recording on and it wasn't. All I did there, you didn't miss much. All I did was take those wax crayons and press very firmly and made big loop-de-loo scribbles. And now I'm adding solid white paint, dry on dry, mostly in the middle and a little bit surrounding. What I'm trying to do is add white texture to the paper and enhance some of the, with putting that white down in the middle, it's really accenting the swooshy colors of the wax circles. So I'm going to do it all over, but I'm not covering the paper completely. Same thing as before. And now I'm going to get out my matte medium. That was dry, by the way. I dried in between. Now I've got matte medium, and I'm using a bigger brush, and I'm going to paint a coat of matte medium over the entire spread, left and right. So it makes it, and remember, this dries more clear than it looks right now. It looks more milky when you put it down, and it does dry clear. But what I am trying to do, and it will be effective, is to make it look a little bit cloudy. So I'm shooting those wax circles into the background. Still thinking about what I'm doing. And then I realized, you know what, before this dries, I'm going to get a Q-tip out and I want to reveal some of those circles a little bit stronger. So I'm using the Q-tip and I'm pressing really hard, and it's not all coming off, but I really like that. I like how scrapey and scratchy it is. So I'm going to try and get this scratchy look on all of the circles, but it won't reveal all of it. So it's, again, it's very random, very organic. I like that. But you have to do this quickly because that matte medium dries quite quickly. And I believe there I had to dab the paper towel into some water because it was really starting to dry. So I'm just trying to enhance some of the scratchy effect. And I really like how that yellow overlapped some of the scratchy orange. I think that's fun. A lot of fun. And I don't usually do this in my abstracts. I really have enjoyed in this book, especially doing a lot of wax resist and then playing around with the effects that I can do with it. So that's good and dry. I'm using the same magenta as the previous spread. And I'm using a bigger brush, not a bigger brush, a soft brush, and I'm just going to move that magenta, which is a wash of magenta. It's very watery. And I'm moving that around the whole page. Now, you might think, oh, well, that's just covered up all that wax. Remember, the wax is a resist. So as I remove and lift some color, and I'm pressing firmly, that wax reveals itself as well. Now I'm doing the same on the right. I just thought I'd end the spread of part 5 here. I'd end this book this week with something really bright and cheerful and fun. I am just playing for my soul here. So what I've done there is I've got a lot of layers now. I really think that's playful and fun. And it does reveal some textures in the background as well. But I don't want to fight the texture to fight too much with the wax. So I was giving it a good dry, and then I thought, I don't want that white there. I would prefer to have more Indian yellow. That way I can, it complements the Indian yellow in the wax crayons, adds a new dimension. It's such a fun color. I love when I put it down, how it just altered this page. I thought it was too busy with the white. The contrast was too strong. So by adding this Indian yellow, I bring back the intensity of all the colors so that they're all similar intensity. The white was too contrast. And I'm just doing the same little trick. And I decided, you know what, there's a lot of pattern there. I want to soften it. So I got my spray bottle out. First I did a little more yellow there, but what I'm going to do is, because I don't want to fight with the wax circles, I want them to be revealed quite boldly. So I'm adding more yellow, but I'm going to spray the spread with water and see how it distributes some of that color. Let's get that spray out. I like that. There's a lot of pattern, but it's a little bit busy. So I thought if I spray while it's still a little dry, wet, I will release some of that. And what I'm going for is a more filmy effect, a more cloudy, filmy effect instead of how it was. So I like that. It's really wet. I've got to let it dry, but I like that. That's fun. It's different. Haven't done anything like that yet. It's very cheerful. So there you have it, everybody. I had a lot of fun with that one. Good way to end. And thank you so much for watching. And the sky's the limit. Wait for next week, part 5, because we'll have a lot more fun taking things in another direction, hopefully. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.